Alright, what I have here is the Sig Sauer P365 and the Walther PPSM2, two very popular concealed carry firearms. The video goes along with the written article, which breaks it down a little bit more in depth as far as specifications and things like that. But I wanted to give you my personal preference. I have about 1,000 rounds through the 365 and 1,000 rounds through the PPS. So obviously there are different sizes and weights. The PPS is a bit longer. It comes in at about a ½ inch longer overall length, and the distance from the top of the slide to the bottom of your mag well is about a ½ inch longer on the PPS as well. The PPS also weighs a little bit more. At the widest point, both firearms measure at 1 inch, and that is including the controls, slide stop or takedown lever. Both firearms come from the factory with above average self-defense sights. The 365 comes with Trigicon sights, and you can see they're 3-dot sights with the front dot being a bright green self-illuminated dot. The two rear dots are also self-illuminated. Also has some serration here to keep from reflecting any light, which is very nice. And the rear sight is 90 degrees, which aids in one-handed manipulation. Moving over to the PPS, which also has a 3-dot system. These are phosphorescent, which mean they glow in the dark, but they are not self-illuminating. But that front dot is very recognizable, very noticeable. I like that a lot. The rear dots are also very prominent, which personally I don't care for on a self-defense firearm, but you can simply black those out if you wanted to. The rear sight is slanted slightly to the rear, which means it's not as ideal for one-handed manipulation. Both firearms have forward and rearward serrations, which make racking the slide or doing chamber checks very easy. Both firearms are set up for a right-handed shooter, where the slide stop is on the left-hand side, as well as the magazine release. Neither one of these are ambidextrous, so there is no controls on the right-hand side. However, the 365's magazine release can be switched over to the right-hand side of the firearm. The PPS M2 is not reversible and can only be on the left-hand side. I found the magazine releases on both guns very easy to operate, as well as the slide stops. I don't have large hands, but I did not have to break my grip to reach the slide stop or the magazine release on either firearm. Both firearms have a decent amount of stippling. The 365, I'm hesitant to say it's aggressive, but it is more aggressive than the PPS M2. You can see that it is very fine. It's almost like fine sandpaper, and it goes 360 degrees around the firearm, however, not on the corners and not underneath the trigger guard right there where your finger would rest. The PPS does have that Walther multi-directional stippling pattern that is on most of their firearms, and it does wrap 360 degrees around and even on the corners, which is very nice. The 365 does come with the tack rail, however, it's proprietary to Sig, where the PPS M2 has no tack rail. The M1 had a tack rail, not sure why they did away with that. Trigger feel on both of these guns is much different. The 365's pull weight is 5.5 pounds, while the Walther's is 6.5, and that's not really a big difference to me. The difference is how the overall trigger tracks through the pull. Real light take up. And once it hits that wall or right before it breaks, it's pretty crisp. And then it resets at 0.3 inches. Now the Walther's take up is very mushy and spongy, very similar to other polymer striker fired guns that you might be familiar with. And when you get to that wall, it's not as defined. However, it does break very crisp, and the reset is 0.3 inches, just like the 365. So the trigger feels, not only the shoe itself feels different, but the way it tracks through that pull is much different. Capacity is huge, and that's what makes the 365 so great, is that it comes from the factory with two 10-round magazines. This one has a pinky extension, but it is 10 rounds. The Walther, on the other hand, comes with 3 magazines, a 6-round, a 7-round, and an 8-round magazine. However, if you see the difference, here you have 10 plus 1, so you have 11-round capacity with your 365. I'm going to put the 8-round magazine in the PPS. Now you have 8 and 1, so now you have a 9-round capacity, but let's look at the difference here. The difference in the length from top of the slide to bottom of the magazine is much longer on the PPS, and you have less capacity. And this is actually the measurement that's probably most difficult to conceal for most concealed carriers. Other reviewers have found witness marks appearing on the barrels of both firearms after a few hundred rounds, and I can confirm that both my firearms have witness marks. We're talking about the witness marks on the 365 here and what they look like. You can see right there the shinier part, the shiny parts here and here. And now on the PPS as well, there are some witness marks here, and others have found a problem with the firing pin either breaking or being too short and causing light primer strikes. I haven't had that issue, and from what I can understand, it's about a 0.001% that the earlier models had that issue. I have found some extraction issues with aluminum case ammunition with the 365, but as far as hollow point, full metal jacket, brass case ammunition, no issues whatsoever. With the PPS, I had two incidents where the slide did not go fully into battery. However, that was out of 1,000 rounds, and it was pretty early on when I started shooting it. So it worked itself out, and after that, I didn't have any issues. As far as ergonomic shootability, I like the 365's trigger feel better than the M2's trigger. However, the PPSM2 felt less like a small gun when I was shooting it, and that has probably a lot to do with its added weight, a little bit longer of a slide, and more grip surface area here. As far as which one's better or which one you should carry, that's going to be a personal choice. The 365 is the gun I carry every day now. It replaced my Glock 27, and the reason for that is pretty obvious. It is the capacity. Both are very concealable. They were both very reliable as far as the 1,000 rounds that I put through both of them. It's really going to boil down to capacity, price point, and what trigger feels really good in your hands, and overall ergonomics. Now, don't take my word for it. Get both of these guns in your hands. Go out, test them out, see what feels great for you, and go with that. So I hope this video, along with the article, really helps you compare and contrast these two firearms and get exactly what you want.